Hello, everyone. My name is Lakisha Spletzer, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Kishaz Talks. First of all, I'd like to say welcome back and thanks for giving me another try. It's been a couple of years since my last vlog, and a lot happened to me in my personal life with my family and my health and just other crazy things, which, as I say, that's life. But I realized while I was kind of sitting back and cooling my heels that I had not done a vlog for the last book I got published. And that book is The Melody, the sequel to The Tempo. So I thought it was time for us to go back and take a look at a very special book and its place in my heart. First, I want to thank JD Hollyfield for the beautiful cover. So I'm going to hold it up so you guys can see it a little bit better. JD, as always, did an amazing job with the cover, which I appreciate. And then just a side note, which I didn't have this information when I did the video for the tempo, but JD is a very devious kind of cover designer. He likes to put in, I guess we could almost call them like Easter egg type things. But for the covers of this particular series, the Elemental Symphony, he's been looking up composers that have music pieces that have something to do with the elements. So in the tempo, he had a particular composer piece, and then for this one, the melody, the name of the piece is Air, because well, this book is about the air elemental jasmine. So if you are into music and you kind of want to look it up and see what it's all about, that's the piece that's in the background that makes up the cover. Also, another great part about this book is on the cover you can see that there is a hand that is creating. I'll hold it up for you like this right here. Is creating the symbol. This hand belongs to the girl who inspired the character of Jasmine. So on all the covers, especially books 2 through 5, which deal with each specific element, you'll get to see an actual physical representation of the girls, mainly their hands, because that's kind of the easiest thing to, take photographs of. But you'll get to see their individual hands on the books. So I thought that was a neat little touch and kind of a nod to the ladies for allowing me to write about them. I also want to take a moment to thank my editor, Lynn, who has edited every book I've written since the beginning. She's an amazing editor, and without her, to be honest, I'd be a wreck. So, Lynn, thank you very much for everything you've done for me. Now that I've thanked the crew that made this book pop, it's time to actually talk about the book itself. So, at the risk of me dropping this book or covering my face like this, I'm going to actually set the book down and I'm going to talk about the melody. The melody is the sequel to the tempo. Both books are part of my Elemental Symphony series, which once I kind of worked out details in my head, I realized that the Elemental Symphony series is part of a larger series known as The Veil. And currently, in the overall grand scheme timeline type of thing, it would come second in the series lineup within The Veil. There's one series that would come before it called the Peacekeeper series that has not even been written. It's kind of all conceptual on paper. Then would come Elemental Symphony series, which has the tempo and the melody. After that would come the Beams and Light series. Uh, and then after that, there's another one called the OCD, which there's a pun intended there. That's another one that's not been started. The Beams and Light actually has Moonbeams and then a short story called Moon Feast in it. So there's several um, books in the Veil series, but the individual sub-series that go with it, some are started, some are not. So I've got quite a bit that'll keep me going for the next few years, as you know, as we ride along. The Elemental Symphony series, however, has 6 books. So the Melody is book 2 of 6. But it is the first book that focuses solely on a particular elemental. There are 4 girls: Jasmine, Tamara, Marissa, and Aaliyah. All 4 girls have an elemental ability or power. They, their story, I should say, starts in the tempo where we are introduced to the 4 young ladies as they begin to embark upon their journey to become elemental wielders and get the training they need to effectively wield their powers. And if you haven't read the first book, The Tempo, I'm not going to say a lot because I don't want to give away the plots and stuff, but it kind of helps to read the books in sequence. Reading them out of sequence might throw you off a little bit because there are things that happen that will be happening in each book prior to the next one that you kind of would like to make sure you've read so you know where you're at in the storyline. But book 2 does pick up immediately following the events in book 1, where some things happen and the girls have to embark upon their various journeys to learn more about themselves, about their world, about their powers, and about their place in it. So, at the heart of the series, it's an adventure story, but it's also a coming of age story. So, I decided to kick off the individual books within the series with Air. The next one would be Earth, and that book is called The Rhythm. After Earth comes Fire, that one's called The Timbre. Then comes Water, The Counterpoint, and then finally The Harmony, which is book 6, will bring everything back together full circle with the resounding close. So that's the outline, the plan for the series, but we're going to talk about, like I said before, the melody. Each girl that was written in the series is an actual, real, live, breathing, walking, talking person. Um, a lot of you may or may not know, but I also, in addition to writing, do teach dance. I'm a dance teacher. Yay, I know, right? So very, very creative in all aspects, I guess you could say. And I draw a little bit, not as great as my kids, but I am okay. But I am a dance teacher, and several years ago, I was teaching, and my oldest daughter and the girls that were in the group with her that danced with her were dancing around, and we were, kind of having a little break from, learning choreography. And I'm watching them joke around with each other, play, wrestle, act silly, and, just be girls and enjoy themselves. And while I was watching them, I thought about how close they were, how tight they were, and how cool would it be if the 4 of them could have kind of like a girl power adventure, where it was all about the ladies. Because at that time, the last Airbender movie had come out, and I know, everyone has various opinions about what they think about the movie, but that aside, it was my reaction to that movie, I should say, that prompted my writing of the Elemental Symphony series because I saw the visuals and I watched how they covered each of the elements, and I thought, man, wouldn't that be cool if I could write a girl story that was kind of like this but a little different. But they got to have adventures, and they were the ones that got to wield the powers. And oh my God, wouldn't it be awesome? So this was the thought that had been going through my head on and off since I'd watched the movie, and then watching um, the girls do their thing and have fun, joke, and carry on. And I thought, wow, they all have such vibrant, strong, amazing personalities. What if I put them in this story, this girl-driven story? And then it was like, and lights and all that great crazy stuff that inspiration has struck, light bulbs going off, camera flashes. And I thought, yes, I got an idea. Oh, I'm gonna have to ask parents because I don't want to write about their kids and the parents not want their kids to be in a story. I know you're thinking, what parent would want their kid in a book? Well, in this day and age, a lot of crazy stuff happens, and as parents, we have to be cautious. So I approached each girl's, parents, and my daughter, obviously, I didn't have to ask anybody because she was going in the book regardless. But I asked the other three, their parents, and all the parents were very excited and gung ho for this. They were like, "Oh, you gonna put our kids in a book?" Yeah, I was like, yes. Totally excited, totally happy, and that was basically how the concept kind of sort of came together. Then I realized, okay, got my four major characters. Whew, I gotta write a series. Oh, how am I going to go about this? How am I going to do this? It took a little bit of time, and then I realized that I had to kind of make it cohesive. Whatever I chose to do, it had to be something that they all could do together, or if I had to separate them and have them doing different things, that it would come back into a central point. And so I thought, well, let's put them in the world of the Veil, which I had already written about previously in my book called Moonbeams, which had been published in 2011. And I thought, well, I've got world building notes on this. Why not set it in the same universe? It'll be its own series, but let's set it in the same universe and let's just take a different area within this universe here of the Veil and give them their free reign to do what they want. And I thought, yes, good job, Keisha. So that's where the concept came in. Then I thought, well, we got to give them a villain because all good stories have villains, right? But I couldn't make up my mind if I wanted it to be someone their own age. Did I want them to be, going against adult figures? Is it going to be monsters? What kind of villain would work best? Ultimately, I chose to actually create a couple of villains, but each villain works kind of with each other, but also independently of each other. So they're dealing with various villains on different fronts at different times throughout the story. But the overall main baddie is a queen that comes in and takes over ruling of their country, and who has no right to be ruling, but she decided she wanted to be queen, and well, we all know how that works out. So she becomes the queen and causes all the chaos that leads up to obviously the adventures that the girls get to, have. Also, when creating the stories, I talked with the four girls that the character was based on, and I did something called character sheets, where I told them they could make up how they wanted to look, what they were wearing, the kinds of families they wanted to have or not have in some cases, um, their favorite kind of accessory, necklaces, bracelets, earrings, what have you, and their favorite animal. And I know you're looking at the screen going, why all those things? Well, it's because the concept is, they have magic powers, but I wanted to give them familiars because at the core of magic, I love that whole familiar kind of do your bidding thing, but I didn't want it to be like human familiars because sometimes that creeps me out. So I thought, well, let's do animals because animals are like awesome, and it would give the girls a chance to be creative, and they got to pick it. The only other stipulation with picking the familiar was it had to be an animal that fit your elements, which for the water elemental, which is my daughter, she had a little bit of trouble because once I gave that stipulation, she's like, okay, I could do this, this, and this. And then I'm thinking, yeah, but then it's got to be feasible because if you're actually using, your elements, it's got to be something that can work no matter what type of water. So I expanded her ability a little bit so that it included any liquids to give her a little bit more of a thing to pick from. But that leads us into um, Jasmine. Jasmine's choice for familiar, it was a very interesting one. She didn't want any of the typical flying creatures. So Phoenix was out, dragons were out, birds, anything, I don't know, normal. So um, when she asked for her particular familiar, which I'm not going to tell you because I want you to read the books to find out what she chose, it's not a normal um, choice by any stretch of the imagination, but that's what made it so cool. And I told her, sure, you can do that, and we'll just slap some wings on it, and it'll be a special species in the Veil because I mean it's a magical universe, and it exists in my mind. So we'll have it, and a creature that you never would have thought would have had wings and flew, because we know pigs can fly, and we've seen elephants fly, but you've not seen this creature fly. But she did pick a very interesting one. The other girls, they mostly picked animals that you recognize, or they picked an animal and we kind of modifying it a little bit for their familiars. So when you get to their books, you'll get to find out what they picked. Um, but yeah, her familiar is very interesting. So now we're going to take a moment and talk about the book itself. There's plenty of backstory that goes into this book, as well as any of the books that will be forthcoming with the Elemental Symphony series. The books, at their core, are about growing up and adventures, but also at the end of the day, it's about the things and experiences that the real life girls live through. That's why The Melody is such an emotional book for me. Jasmine, not only the character, but the young lady who the character is based on, suffered tragic loss right before the writing of the book. She was in a motorcycle accident with her father. Jasmine ended up in a coma, and her father died from his injuries. It was a very devastating time for all of us involved, and it was especially devastating to her family and to those of us that knew and loved her best. It was devastating to me because I had grown so close to the girls throughout the years when they came to me at the ages of 8 and 7, all the way up until when the accident happened. They were 11 and 12. And it was a very emotional moment when I got the phone call letting me know that she was inbound to the hospital, that she had suffered a head injury, and that her father was on his way to a hospital. They got separated because of a storm that blew in that day. So he wasn't with her when she went to the other hospital. And she was in a coma and did not know that her own father had passed away from his injuries. Jasmine was in that coma for several months, ferociously clinging to life. She had always been probably one of the most vivacious of the four, her self proclaimed airhead, as she told us. She always had a smile, always joked, was really the life of the party. And to have to sit and wait and hope and pray that this young woman, this vivacious person, would make it through was very hard. But at my core and at my center, I am a very hopeful person. I joke about being a closet optimist, but I really am. And if there was anything I knew about Jasmine and that I knew well, was that that girl was a fighter. She always strongly believed in whatever she was doing, and she would stand her ground, even if she wasn't in the right. But I couldn't bring comfort from those thoughts. I was too busy eaten up with worry and just hoping that the young lady who meant so much to so many people was going to pull through. I halted writing on the book because, quite frankly, and I've told people this before, and it's the truth, if she had not woken from that coma, if she had not recovered, the Elemental Symphony series probably would never have been finished being written. I think my devastation and my emotional hurt would have been so great that I just would not have been able to do the rest of the series. But thankfully, she lived. And she came out of the coma and made great strides. She'll never quite be the same Jasmine we knew, because that is the nature of head injuries after all. But that fighting spirit, that indomitable will of hers, the humor that is Jasmine's and Jasmine's alone, remained intact. And once she came out of it, I breathed a sigh of relief. And then I knew, I knew what I was going to put in her book. The girls, when we were creating their characters, had to tell me two other important things. One was the type of family life they wanted, and the other was what they wanted their character to experience. Jasmine said she wanted to be in a large family, which pretty much mirrored her real life, where she had a lot of siblings and step siblings. And then she said she wanted her character to be adopted because she knew friends that had been adopted, and they always had questions, who were my parents? Where did I come from? Who am I really? And Jasmine was always intrigued by that particular topic. So that was going to be the core of her story. I realized once my writing spirit came back and once she was out of harm's way and, going through therapy and starting to recover, um, movement, mobility, speech, everything, I realized that her story was going to reflect what had happened. They did eventually tell her, when they felt she was able to process it, about her father's death. Um, and I wanted to, in this book, pay tribute to the man that raised Jasmine and helped her become such a strong personality. So in the story, her father is one of the characters, and he does play a role in the story. So I'm trying not to cry because I always get emotional when I remember all those anxiety filled months. But I hope that those that read the stories, when you read each girl's story as they're written, that you take something away from it. And I hope that you remember too that behind each of these stories is a real life girl who is just like you, who has fears like you, hopes like you, dreams like you, and thoughts like you. And that in a world so full of so much insanity right now, with the things happening in different countries where women and girls are not treated with the respect that they should be having, where they're treated sometimes as less than, you know, the air we breathe. Remember that you're not alone, that we all experience things, but at the end of the day, we hope that you'll remember we are here, an invisible army standing right next to you, and that the spirit and the strength that we possess, you just have to hold on to it and be firm. And yes, know that you'll break sometimes. Sometimes we'll even shatter. But just because you're shattered doesn't mean you can't pick up those pieces and gain strength from that and go forward. Jasmine proved that, and every day that she lives life to the fullest, she continues to prove that. And I use that as my inspiration to never give up, to always maintain my hope, and to remember that at the end of the day, I'm not alone, and neither are you. I hope that you'll pick up this series, and I hope you'll give it a try. I hope that the girls' adventures will inspire you, drive you, make you laugh, make you cry. But just at the end of the day, I hope you enjoy the stories that we're telling and the story that is your own. So I think that about sums it up, at the risk of me having to grab a box of tissues and cry here for the whole world to see. Um, that's the basis of the melody. And I hope that you will write your own melody and that you'll dance to your own tune. And I can't wait to see what you have out there. So that's it for this episode of Keisha's Talks. I'll see you again when I see you, hopefully after my writer's block disappears and I can get back into writing and putting out more books for you guys. But who knows? I may talk about other author topics. We'll see. But for today, that's it. Again, thank you for watching. And if you're curious about any of my other books, feel free to, check out the list on the screen and visit some of the other books and learn more about them. I'm Lakisha Spletzer, and again, thank you for watching this edition of Keisha's Talks.